In order to understand Ptolemy II, also known as Ptolemy the Great, one must first have an understanding of the timeline of his life. Ptolemy II, youngest son of Ptolemy I, became his father's co-regent in 284 BCE, and by 282 BCE was the king outright as a result of his father's death. In around 280 BC, depending on who you ask, he inaugurated the Ptolemia, a festival held every 4 years to honour his father and the Ptolemaic dynasty. 274 BCE saw Ptolemy II defend Egypt against Antiochus I in the First Syrian War, whom he defeated handily by 272 BCE, at which point a peace treaty was signed. Peace would not last for long, however, as Ptolemy deliberately turned many Greek states against Macedon out of fear that the Macedonians would threaten the reach of his power. This resulted in the Cremontian War, which would rage on from 267 to 261 BCE, resulting in a devastating Macedonian victory and signalling a loss of control of the Greek city-states for Ptolemy. This theme of constant warfare would become a common one during Ptolemy II's reign, as within less than a year of the Cremontian War, the Second Syrian War took place, from 260 to 253 BCE, and would cause the Egyptians to suffer further losses. Circa 250 BCE, however, saw a victory for Ptolemy II come in the form of a naval battle against Antigonus, which was won by the Egyptian forces. The rest of his reign would then go on without major incidents right up until the year 246 BCE, when Ptolemy died, succumbing presumably to age, as no other cause has been recorded.
But how did Ptolemy II maintain his rule over the native Egyptians? Ptolemy II had effectively repackaged the seizure of Egypt by Macedonian warlords as the passing of political power into the hands of a legitimate pharaoh. Across various cultural facets, the Macedonian elite had effectively weaved themselves into the Egyptian tapestry in several ways. The first and most obvious is the blending of the image of Basilius and Pharaoh. To the native Egyptians, such a sovereign title and power was not unusual at all. The pharaohs that had ruled Egypt for centuries sat atop a socio-economic hierarchy and more or less commanded the absolute loyalty of the state. Under the rule of Ptolemy II, these regal identities had been blended, most obviously in artistic motifs. As we look at depictions of Ptolemy II in Egyptian dress, it's not difficult to imagine that in rhetoric and public performance, the Ptolemaic regime had adopted various other customs inherited from the pharaohs as a source of legitimacy. Another way was the establishment of various cults across Egypt. Using a bureaucracy of priests, Ptolemy II had presided over the deification of his own parents as the saviour gods, as well as himself and his wife, who also happened to be his sister, as the sibling gods. The pharaohs before them were believed to bear divine power, often deified after their deaths, in the cycle of Egyptian cult worship that served as the linchpin of the Egyptian social hierarchy. It quickly becomes obvious where Ptolemy may have found his well-received inspiration. By embellishing their rule with his distinctly Greco-Egyptian identity, the Macedonian rulers of Egypt were able to rule the ancient kingdom until Cleopatra VII, not as Egyptians, nor necessarily as entirely Greeks, but as profoundly Ptolemaic actors in the ancient Near East.